Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, depending where you are located while listening to this lecture. Today in this lecture, I will focus on various classification parameters of distance teaching universities. A brief introduction. The last 15 years have witnessed a huge expansion of higher education systems. I will provide a few numbers. If at the start of the 20th century, let's say 1910, according to various estimates of international bodies like UNESCO, the OECD, and the World Bank, altogether there were around 1 million students around the world. In 1960s, the estimate is that there were already 7 million students. And in 2010, we speak of over 150 million students, which is really a huge expansion. In some of the countries, maybe the OECD countries, the percentage of the relevant age cohort which participate in higher education is over 50%, while after the Second World War, the estimate was of 2 to 3% of the relevant age cohort. This huge expansion was followed also by an enormous diversification of higher education institutions. If we take United States, the Carnegie for the Advancement of Teaching, which publishes the classification of higher education institutes in the United States, right now there are no less than 34 different categories of higher education institutions. So obviously the huge expansion was also followed by a very large diversity, which applies also to distance teaching universities. Another estimate right now that around 10% of the student body over the world is studying through various forms of distance teaching. So we speak about around 15 million students worldwide that study in different distance teaching universities. And the lecture today will try to classify them according to various parameters. So we shall move on. I have chosen a few leading parameters, but they are by no means exhaustive. You can find also other parameters to classify distance teaching universities. So we are going to talk about the institutional models, and we'll elaborate on it in a few minutes. We will talk about various generations of technology, how we can classify distance teaching universities according to the generations of technology. Size, there are very large, enormous distance teaching universities which teach over 1 million students, and some small institutes which teach even less than 1,000 students, which makes a big difference of how they operate and the underlying premises on which they operate. There are obviously public distance teaching institutions and private for-profit and no-for-profit. The scope of operation in the globalized world in which we live right now makes also a big difference if it's a local university, a national university, or a global or local university. And there are, of course, also instructional approaches, which I will explain again further on. And it's very important also to, not so important, but it's very interesting to classify some of the distance teaching universities according to their innovative clusters. In some higher education systems, the distance teaching universities were most innovative, like the British Open University, and in some others less. So it's also an interesting parameter to compare distance teaching providers. The first classification parameter we are going to speak of are the institutional modes. In the relevant literature, you usually hear about these 4 and also the 5th. I will say why I separated from the 4 first ones. And the blended mode can be applied also in single mode distance universities, dual mode, extensions, consortia, and even in campus-based universities. So it's a separate mode. The single mode universities are those universities that were established primarily for teaching distance students. The dual mode university usually were in Australia and in Canada. They were campus-based universities that the government designated them to teach also off-campus students. So they were teaching 2 types of students, off-campus and on-campus. Extensions is mainly an American mode. UMUC, the University of Maryland University College, started in 1920 as an extension of the University of Maryland College Park, and only in 1947 it has become the University of Maryland University College, and in 1970 it became a totally fully fledged autonomous university. As a consortia, right now we have many consortia, which means that several universities and colleges, higher education institutes, sometimes also universities and companies of the corporate world, join forces in order to provide academic programs in various forms. And again, the blended mode can be manifested in all of these types, and we'll explain a little bit further on. When we speak on single mode distance teaching universities, they are not identical to each other. And I have chosen several examples to exemplify how single mode distance teaching universities that were established primarily to serve the clientele of distance students can be very different from each other. Let's take first the UK Open University. It was established in 1969. It is considered by many scholars in the field writing on distance education as the mecca of distance teaching universities. It has provided reputation and legitimacy to distance education in an era which some of the correspondence colleges were considered as providing low-level education. It was very innovative in the context of the British Open University. It actually adopted an open admission policy. It provided an opportunity for part-time students, which was non-existent in Britain in 1969, and adopted an industrial model of developing study materials, which I'll also explain a little bit later on. And right now it teaches around 200,000 students in Britain and also in many other parts of the world. The Fernuniversität in Germany was established a few years after the British Open University, and though it is also based on the idea of the industrial mode provided by the UK Open University, it is very different from the UK Open University in the sense that, except the fact that it teaches distance students, it very much is willing to emphasize that it is exactly like all other German universities. It has the same entry requirements, it poses the same entry requirements as other German universities, the same exit requirements, the same programs. And the only difference between the Fernuniversität and other German universities is that they send the materials to students located all over Germany and also in other parts of the world that speak German. The Open University of Catalonia, which was established 15 years ago in Barcelona, is a very different type of a single-mode distance teaching university, because from the very outset, it decided that it will be an online university. They have around 50,000 students that they teach in many different countries. They have agreements with also many corporate companies, and everything, they have no tutorials face-to-face. Everything is conducted online, which is a very different mode from the distance teaching universities, which are based on the industrial model. The China Central Radio and TV University, which this year decided to change its name, and it's right now entitled China's Open University, again, is a single-mode distance teaching university, which teaches over 1.6 million students, and the model is very different from the other three that we right now mentioned. The lectures are provided to the student through radio and TV. After the lectures are given, they are recorded. The students meet in classes, mainly at workplaces, and discuss the lectures and make also assignments and various other things that they should do throughout their study. So it's mainly based through radio and TV, and even now when it is entitled the Open University of China, still the major medium for instruction is the television in this university. The National Technology University in the United States, NTU, was again a very new venture of a single-mode university. It teaches only, as far as I remember, 5 to 6 various master degree programs in engineering. It has no faculty of itself. It is actually an intermediate body between universities, some of them very famous and well-to-do universities like MIT, Berkeley, and Harvard, and around 300 companies. It grants the degrees based on lectures that are provided by professors of other universities. The lectures are recorded. Some students listen it simultaneously while the lecture is given, but most prefer to listen to the lecture when it is videotaped. So again, a single-mode university, but very different from the 4 other ones. And there is Phoenix University, which is the private largest distance teaching university in the United States. And here again, the model is a little bit different from the other ones which I mentioned, because at the start, the Phoenix University had many locations throughout the United States, not far away from highways and large parking lots, which enabled the university, the students that registered to this university to meet and park their cars with no problems. But it was a face-to-face meeting, and in this sense, it was distance just by the fact that Phoenix University enabled studies throughout the United States. But the studies themselves were face-to-face. Right now, more students are studying online, and the blended model also applies. But basically, as far as I know, up till now, 40% of the students prefer the face-to-face meetings. Others prefer totally online. And there are also a number of students, like 20%, that prefer the blended mode. They go to the classes, not for a full kind of schedule of classes, but just part of it. And the other part they do online. So you see, when you speak about different type single mode distance teaching universities, they are not made of the same mold. The one thing that combines all of them, that they were established mainly for the purpose of teaching distance teaching students. But otherwise, they may operate on very different underlying premises, technologically, pedagogically, and also their size difference most significantly. If we move to the dual mode universities, again here, we can identify several types. The most common one, as I said, were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Canadian and Australian universities, which taught at the same time off and on-campus students. And here usually there is a kind of misunderstanding about the difference between dual mode and blended mode. The dual mode emphasizes that the university teaches 2 different target populations: students that are located on campus and students that are located off campus. But here again, I attended in November 2009 a meeting of SCOPE, a standing conference of presidents, which took place in Barcelona in the University of Catalonia, the Open University of Catalonia. And there was going there an interesting discussion, what constitutes distance education. And some people really disagree as what is distance education. What do I mean? For example, if you take branch campuses, if A&M Texas University or MIT or any other universities has branch campuses that operate in the Gulf countries, in Qatar, in Singapore, or in China, but the studies are conducted on these branch campuses, mainly face-to-face, is it a distance education operation or not? To my opinion, yes, and many also agree with this opinion, that if you outreach to students beyond the central campus, this is distance education. But some of the people in this COP meeting in Barcelona argued that distance education really indicates that there is a distance that exists between the students and the teachers. And if you teach face-to-face, it's not considered to be distance education. So you see, this is a dilemma of how distance education is actually defined. But if we take the broader definition that speaks about outreaching and reaching out students beyond a central campus, then any operation beyond the central campus, even if it is provided face-to-face, is distance education. If, again, take UMUC, the University of Maryland University College, when it started to operate as a fully fledged autonomous university, its main target at the beginning were the military of the US, located in various bases around the world. But up till now, many of the classes are held face-to-face. You send lecturers to these bases, which are far away, but the lectures are given face-to-face. And it is considered to be distance education according to the broader definition of distance education. Again, offshore extensions. You have many universities which do not establish a full branch campus. And there are many branch campuses right now around the world. But just offshore extensions of specific programs, mainly in niche areas like MBA, psychology, education, economics, digital technologies, computer science, and so on. And they operate around the world. Some of them, again, teach face-to-face. Some of them are assisted by online education. If we move to the third classification, before the third classification, about the blended mode. As I emphasized beforehand, while we speak on the dual mode, we speak on two different student clienteles. The blended mode indicates that the same students, not two different clienteles, but the same student study concurrently, face-to-face and distance teaching in distance teaching settings, online or at a different mode of distance education, either in a framework of a program or in any given course. What do I mean? You can study a master degree, take 3 courses face-to-face and other courses online or in any other mixture. So this is a blended mode within a program. You can also take any given specific course, and some of the lectures are given in the classroom when you have encounters with the professors or tutors. In other frameworks and other classes other lectures are taught online. So this is a blended mode within a course. But it means that the same student, not two different target population, studied concurrently, both in a face-to-face and in a distance education mode. This is why it cannot be classified as a separate mode, because it is manifested in all the different types, including campus-based universities. I will give you some examples. At the Open University of Israel, which I'm right now sitting in one of its studios, we have a mode of intensive tutorials. What does it mean, intensive tutorials? Our materials are designed in such a way that students can study by themselves, for self-study. But because Israel is not a big country and the distance is not so huge, so students, if they wish, can meet their tutors once a week. They pay a little bit more money, but they can meet their tutors once a week. Not the lecturers or the faculties that develop the courses, but the tutors. So in this mode, the Open University of Israel is definitely a single-mode distance teaching university, but the tutorials, in a way, provide a blended mode, because you have the self-study materials and face-to-face tutorials. If we take the dual mode universities, naturally, because they have the students that are located on campus, and now since the digital technologies have emerged, you have the opportunity of teaching them online. So the students that study on campus can study also in online classes. And this is, again, blended modes manifested in a dual mode university. You have the extensions in the United States, again, which combine both face-to-face and also online teaching. And the same goes also for consortia and obviously also for campus-based universities. This year, actually previous year, in March 2009, I published a book which is entitled Digital Technologies in Higher Education, Sweeping Expectation and Actual Effects. And it tries to analyze and examine the implementation of digital technologies in higher education systems all over the world. And one of my conclusions is that actually currently online teaching or e-learning, the various manifestation of e-learning, because people use the term e-learning and mean different things, is mainly manifested in campus-based universities, and most distance education is not carried on through the digital technologies. So obviously I will also emphasize it a little bit further on, that e-learning and distance education are definitely not the same thing, though people, mainly in United States and Canada, the Anglo-Saxon world, sometimes use it as synonyms, but they are not synonyms. By no way are they synonyms. Now we move to the second classification parameter of generations of technology. Generations of technology, usually you hear about three generations, but now some people speak also on the fourth and fifth generation of virtual reality and other emerging technologies. But basically we speak about the print-based, the multimedia, and the computer-based education as generations of technology. Here again, I would like to emphasize that when you speak about a generation, it does not mean that when you move to another generation, you delete or omit totally the former generation, because we are still very much, even in the digital age, based on print-based. So if we take the print-based technology, obviously the first generation of distance education was conducted through correspondence, and sometimes even by handwritten correspondence. So the lectures were sent, or books, textbooks, and other materials were sent to students via mail, and they responded and sent the assignments to tutors or teachers again via mail. It took time, and this was a correspondence education, the first generation of distance education. Some of these correspondence colleges gained a bad reputation because they sent the students not very high-level materials. And as I said, the UK Open University, when it was established in 1969 and provided the new model of the industrial model, it changed totally the way that materials were produced for the purpose of distance education. And of course, but also in the industrial mode, it is still print-based materials. And there is also print within online settings. When you study any given course online, you always get also a list of books and articles that you either go and buy or you can download, but it is still print-based. But print-based is considered to be the first generation of technology, of distance education. Now, if we move to the industrial mode, I want to explain something that is very critical and very important in understanding the industrial mode. Usually, when you speak of higher education settings, it is very difficult to create a balance between the three vectors of the triangle of access, quality, and cost. What do I mean? If you enable large numbers of students to enter a university, usually the quality can go down or the cost can go up. If you want to have a very high qualitative university, usually the cost again go up and the access is limited. The industrial model in distance education has succeeded to create a balance between these three vectors of the triangle of access, quality, and cost. How? You invest a lot of money, high cost, in developing high-quality study materials, but since you can admit large numbers of students, and as I told you, some of universities have hundreds of thousands and even over millions of students, so as the number of students increases, the cost per student decreases. And you do not have any limitation of access because you are not based on a central campus and you do not need campus-based buildings and other establishment. So basically you can enroll huge numbers of students, provide them with high-quality materials and high-quality study learning processes, and also insist on the high quality and provide economies of scale. In the digital age, this balance between these three vectors has moved a little bit, because the whole idea of the digital age is that if you use the collaborative capabilities of the digital technologies, that students can study together and listen to each other through even online, and they also have an ongoing interaction with their teachers and tutors. So you speak usually on very small classes that are taught by a tutor or by a teacher, and the economies of cost are not so clear in the digital age, which is a very important problem. How do we find again the balance in the digital age between access, quality, and cost as we found in the industrial model? Multimedia, the Open University in Britain and also many other universities that were established based on the Open University of Britain, use a multimedia approach. Again, print-based materials, which are still very important, audio, video cassettes, radio, television, satellites, mobile labs, computers, etc. So the whole idea of multimedia that you utilize the pros of various media for the purpose of the subject matter and instructional goals for which this media stand for. If we move to the third generation of the computer-based, which has already developed into various phases, so the computer-based, you have also the option of fully online, like the case of the Open University of Catalonia. But I would tell you that usually most of the computer-based applications are conducted as add-on functions, and in some cases also intensive use of computers. But the majority of distance education right now in distance teaching universities are not conducted as fully online. And as I said before, it's very important to understand that distance education and e-learning are not the same thing. First of all, if we speak on remoteness and proximity, so distance education by its very notion speaks on a distance, remoteness, between the person that teaches or develops the material and the students that study it. E-learning, while it is conducted in on-campus universities, does not denote that there should be any remoteness between the teachers and the students. And also the target population of e-learning and distance education are very different. I would say that from a very early age, even before kindergarten, the little kids already are applying various applications of the e-learning and the digital technologies. While we speak about the classical target population of distance education, it is mainly older students which study and work or have any other limitations of family health that cannot attend the regular campus. And it's a very different population. Even now, when there is a little bit of blurring between campus-based and distance education, still the classical target population of distance education are older students which are employed. And here is just the cover of my book on digital technologies in higher education, Sweeping Expectation and Actual Effect, which was published by Nova Science in New York, and I mentioned earlier. Now let's move to another parameter of classifying distance teaching universities, size. John Daniel, who also was once the Vice Chancellor of the UK Open University, published a very popular and well-known book which is called Mega Universities. And there he claims that a university that enrolls more than 100,000 students can be entitled to a mega university, and it operates on very different premises as other universities. As I told you, right now there are several universities that reach already over 1 million students. In the China Central Radio TV University, or the Open University of China, you have more than 1.5 million students. In India, the University of Indira Gandhi has over 2 million students. Anadolu University in Turkey has 1.7 million students. And on the other side, you have very small-sized distance teaching universities. And here I wanted to emphasize that size is most important in the industrial mode. It is not so important in the digital age. Because as I told you about the vectors of the triangle, John Daniel called it the iron triangle. So if you have very few students, you cannot invest a lot of money in developing high quality study materials, because then the cost per student will be very, very high. So in order to run a university on the industrial mode and provide economies of scale, you need many students, which is totally not the case in the online model. You can have many students, you can have less students, but it depends how it operates. In the Catalonia University, Open University of Catalonia, for example, you have around 50,000 students, and you have around 200 full faculty and more than 2,000 adjunct faculty from other universities in Spain and other places in the world. So the ratio is around 20 students per faculty. The whole calculation is very different in the digital mode. Now we move on to another parameter, which is public and private. When the large-scale distance teaching universities in the early 70s, following the example of the UK Open Universities, were established, they were mainly public. The UK Open University, for example, at the beginning was even funded 100% by the government of Britain. In other places, it was a large amount of money that the public gave for these universities. In the last, I would say, 2 decades, more and more private, for-profit, and not-for-profit providers of distance education have emerged, mainly in niche areas, and their numbers are growing and going to grow also in the future. They are not getting any money from the public. There is also another kind of variation of public-private. The University of Catalonia, the Open University of Catalonia, is considered to be a public university, but it is run and managed by a private body in order to be able to be flexible and react to the realities, which is very difficult if you operate as a public university and also managed by a public university board. And obviously, there are also many private operations within public universities, which can go in different directions. You can have a university like Hong Kong University, which is a campus-based university, ranked as the second research university in Asia, and is considered to be a very high-level campus university. But it decided also to go and enlarge, widen its operation in postgraduate, professional, and short diploma studies. And right now it has more, its campus students are around 23,000, but its off-campus students which study in various forms, some of them also distance education, are over 100,000 students. So here you have a public university which runs a private operation, and it can also be done in distance teaching universities that run various operations in order to just extend their budgetary basis and to be able to run better and high quality programs for their students who study in distance education frameworks. The scope of operation is also an important issue. Fernuniversität, which was established in North Rhine-Westphalia, and Athabasca University, which was established in Alberta in Canada, are exactly the examples of universities that were established not as national universities, local, but right now they teach students also in other parts of their countries and even beyond the boundaries of their countries. But basically, they were established at the beginning as local universities. Many of the large-scale distance teaching universities, like the UK Open University, UNED in Spain, Universitat Nacional de Educación a Distancia, and the Open University of Israel, were established as national universities, which means that there is no need for more than one such national distance teaching university in any given country, except India, which is bigger than many other countries. And right now, one of the challenges, biggest challenges facing distance education providers is how to operate efficiently and effectively in the global world. Some call it even the glocal context, glocal, which combines global and local. And if you operate locally or globally, again, you need to consider different things, because you cannot teach in your native language if it's not English, if you apply also to students which are located in various parts of the world. So the language of instruction is very important. And you also need to consider whether you want to provide all the spectrum of your curriculum to the global students, or just in very specific areas. You need to consider who are going to be the faculty members that teach students outside your boundaries. And there are many considerations, but this is how the world is moving right now, to a more global network of higher education. Another parameter for classifying distance teaching universities can be according to instructional approaches. And I just mentioned a few which by no means are exhaustive. You have the industrial model of distributed teaching responsibility. I was speaking before on the triangle, but one of the defining features of the industrial model is also the distributed teaching responsibility. What does it mean? If I teach at a campus university, I am responsible for designing the curriculum of this course. I am teaching the course. I'm also evaluating the students and marking their exams. If it's a large class, I have teaching assistants. In the industrial model, a very small nucleus of academic faculty develops the high-quality study materials. In most of the universities, they are not the ones that teach these courses, but the responsibility moves on to course coordinators, usually who have a PhD degree, or in different countries, the requirements might differ, and they are responsible for running the teaching of the course. And if in any given course you have more than thousands or even 10,000 students, obviously no teacher can teach so many students, so you have tutors, and the tutors are subordinated to the course coordinator. So the student, when they meet their tutor, it's actually not the person who developed the course, who had any say how the course will look like. Not only that, they do not have any degrees of freedom to decide to change the content of the course, because the final exam is based on the written material and not what's going on in the classroom. So the industrial model is very much based on distributed teaching responsibility. The collaborative online teaching is a very different mode, as I said. Usually it's a teacher that is responsible for a small number of students, and many say that the maximum of students that can attend such an online class should not exceed 20 students. And then everything is conducted within this small group, which is a very, very different model from the industrial model. You have the satellite video taped lectures like the National Technology University, NTU, that I mentioned beforehand. That this is, again, a different mode, because you can videotape lectures in any part of the world and send them through satellites to different countries. It's particularly, I would say, attractive to countries of developing countries in which they have a lack of infrastructures and also of experts in many fields of study. And of course, the blended mode that we talked about. So you can also classify universities according to the instructional approaches and find other parameters of instructional approaches. Innovative clusters. In a book which I published in 1999, and it was entitled Distance and Campus Universities, Tensions and Interactions, I tried to examine the operation of 5 distance teaching universities, single-mode distance teaching universities, the UK Open University, the Fernand Université, Athabasca University in Canada, UNED in Spain, and the Open University in Israel. And I found that some of these universities were very innovative in the context of their higher education systems, whereas some others were totally conservative. Some of the parameters which I examined these universities were the open admission policy. Just know that though there is a tendency to call many distance teaching universities open universities, very few distance teaching universities have adopted an open admission policy. As far as I know, the UK Open University, the only Open University in the Netherlands, the Open University in Israel, Athabasca University, and maybe some others, but UNED, Fernand Université, many universities in India and also in China, they have not adopted an open admission. So it makes a difference. Student clienteles, at the beginning, most of the student clienteles of these universities were defined as second chance students, part-timers. Right now, you have a much more diverse and heterogeneous mix of students, both in campus universities and also in distance teaching universities. So it depends in what sense the distance teaching universities are distinct and different from campus-based universities, and it is more difficult to define these days as compared to the 60s or the 70s. The technological infrastructure is also very important. We speak a lot about the online and digital age, but there is a huge digital divide between developed and developing countries and between rich and poor. And this technological infrastructure divide actually does not enable to utilize the many capabilities and opportunities that are enabled by the online and in electronic technologies. And it is one of the huge challenges for the future. academic year. The British Open University wanted so much to emphasize at the beginning that it is not going to compete for the same students as other universities, that it also started its year from February and not from September, October as other universities. In Athabasca and in the Dutch Open University, for example, students can enroll year-round, except days like Christmas or Thanksgiving and Easter, but they can decide in any given day of the year to enroll and also decide that they are ready to take exams, which is not the case in other universities. And also the academic curricula, it depends to what extent the distance teaching universities offer innovative, different type, multidisciplinary curricula or the same programs at other universities. And it's a very important issue for policymakers of distance teaching universities to consider. And I would like to finish my lecture with pointing out a few future trends. As I said about the global or local networks, I have to put my eyeglasses in order to read it. The Economist in 2005 has devoted a whole issue to the future of higher education, not just distance education, higher education at large. And it stated that Humboldt University, with its emphasis on research, was one of the transformative institutions of the 19th century. The emerging global university is set to be one of the transformative institutes of the current era. And we will see, I finished last month's article, which I devote to an edited book. The edited book will deal with the theme of turning universities upside down. And I speak there on the challenges of moving from a national policy to a global network policy. And obviously, the landscape of higher education is going to change in the future, and it will also have a huge impact on distance education. Many speak about the potential of mobile technologies, particularly for developed countries, mainly in Africa and the Far East. The mobile technologies have potential that is more studied right now, less applied on a wide range. But some say that maybe these technologies are much more appropriate than the internet for developed countries. And again, the future will show whether this is the case. You have right now a huge institutional diversity, but the diversity is going even to become more and more in the future. One of the important issues which is taking place right now and getting more momentum is the open educational resources. Open educational resources that universities put their best practices and best materials online, like the open courseware of MIT and other universities. The Open University of Israel is also part of the open educational resources. It might be one of the solutions of how to cut down the cost of developing high-quality materials, so not each institute will have to develop its own materials, but will be able to lean and take best practices from other universities. And this is, again, a movement which is gaining momentum, and it will become bigger and wider in the future. One of the huge challenges of the future is to how to monitor quality assurance mechanism, particularly if you go into a global operation. And it is not so easy at all, because you have to encounter the problems of many and different academic cultures, and how do you compare different practices of different academic cultures and gain respect in each context for courses that are provided by an institution which operates in a totally different academic culture. And of course, bridging over the digital divide, which is a huge challenge of the future. Thank you very much for your attention.